Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron, and I am back with more Battlytics excitement around the Mercenaries Kickstarter designs. That's right, we're doing one from the Kickstarter. I think I told you that last time, so maybe it's a surprise, maybe it's not. But regardless, it's here. I'm doing a weird one. I'm doing one that honestly, like, I've never used and I've never owned the model for it, but I definitely have a bunch coming in the Kickstarter. It is the OSR-2D Ostroc. There's a whole series of like Ost mechs. There's like an Ost Scout, an Ostroc, an Ost Soul, and an Ost War. There's so many of them. I'm pretty sure like the Scout is like 35 tons. This one's 60. There's another one that's 60 tons, which was super confusing. I'm pretty sure I thought they were the same mech for like an extended period of time. I don't know. I was going to do a whole series on the Ostmechs, but I decided just to do the Ostroc for now, and we'll look at the other ones maybe down the road. But this one is the OSR-2D. So this is a 3050 era refit. So I figured we'd go back in time. I've been looking a lot at some of the Ilclan era, some of the crazy tech, crazy tech as I call it. So this is just good old bread and butter 3050 era refit. So it's a meager 1,396 battle value. As I said, 60 ton inner sphere heavy. It moves pretty well, 5'8", so that's not bad for a 60 ton, like akin to like the Dragon, things along those lines. Because remember, standard fusion engine in here, and it's got double heat sinks. It's got 15 double heat sinks, which is fantastic. All the other gear is standard gyro, standard cockpit, standard structure, standard armor. And it does have 9 tons, 144 pips, which gives it about 71.6% coverage. Now, looking at the armor diagram, when I put this together and I was looking at it, I was like, man, that's garbage. I don't know why you would ever have this look the way it looks. But then I realized every single weapon is not in the arm. There are no arm-mounted weapons. So I guess if you're going to strip and skimp, you might as well do it on the arm. So actually kind of a pretty smart design in that regard. I mean, I would have preferred more, but at the end of the day, the side torsos are maxed out, and that's exactly what we would want. So pretty interesting. I am very curious to see how the survivability shakes out with that. But looking at the weapons, so let's talk about what it's got. It's got 2 inner sphere ER large lasers, 2 inner sphere medium lasers, and your good old-fashioned SRM-4. These are spread across the side torsos, so pretty interesting there. Now, it does build up quite a bit of heat there just looking at it, so I don't know how it shakes out with the heat sinks. Again, we'll have to look at that in the offensive benchmarks. So it's kind of an interesting design. I'm excited to see what it can do and if it's worth even painting or just leaving in the box, but we'll see, guys. Stick around. Ostroc Battlytics coming right up. And we're back. Here we are. Offensive benchmarks. So a couple of things here that I want to bring to your attention. The first thing is redline benchmark. So once those medium lasers, the SRM, like all that stuff gets into play, we're building up basically 4 points per trigger pull if you're alpha striking. So this mech can build up 33 points of heat. So it has 30, can dissipate 30, right, and then an extra point from walking. So the ER large, rather, as we know, it's not the best or most heat efficient weapon in the game. It's 8 damage, 12 heat. It's not great. Personally, I like the range, shooting out to 19 inches. It's a significant improvement over the standard large. I know this weapon is not everybody's favorite, but you know, I think it does the job as long as you have the heat management to kind of go with it. Now, speaking of heat management, if you keep this thing under wraps, under 4 points of heat, and you're playing it cool, you can deal 143.3 points of damage. Now, I think by comparison, an Atlas is in the 190s in this era. So 143 for, you know, a 60-ton mech is not unreasonable. It's pretty solid. It's not blow the doors off, but it is very solid. Now, if we optimize that, if we push it for a little bit of heat, we can increase the damage by about 5.5%, 5.6% to be exact, up to 151.3. And again, that's delivered over 12 turns. So if we lay on the trigger, we build up a ton of heat. It does take time for that heat to climb. So your average calculated damage at the red line is 135.2. So, what does that tell me? It tells me you can play with this thing a little bit. You can get a little crazy from time to time and alpha strike, and then just take a turn to cool off, or slowly just, bleed off the heat, maybe back off a large laser in the following turn. So not too bad overall. Seems very user-friendly at first glance. Now, lethality. How dangerous is this thing? It's not bad. So it killed the Javelin 89% of the time. Now, keep in mind that it is twice the size of the Javelin, but it was able to do it on an average of 9.35 turns, and that includes the turns where it didn't actually kill it. It extrapolates out basically for those 11% how long it would actually take to kill it. So again, 89% of the time was able to kill it within 10 turns, and after that, at 12 turns, and after that, not so great. So, but 9.35 is not a bad number. It's not a great number. I would want more from a 60-ton mech shooting a Javelin, but it is what it is. So let's take a look at how it killed the Javelin. So the majority of the time, 76.1%, it is CT kills. 4.9% is engine kills. So that's interesting. Because usually, it only has 5 weapons on it. I would have expected that number to be almost negligible, but 4.9 sort of jumped out at me. And then head, 7.9, that's nothing really to write home about. And then again, 11% of the time, it was unable to kill it. Critical hits, pretty good, 4.5. That's pretty much on par with, 4 weapons plus the SRM, which again, remember, SRMs, they're just clusters of 1 missile. So if you do manage to get all 4 missiles to hit and you're in the internal structure area, that's 4 potential chances to generate a crit. So that drives that number up a little bit, which is good. But yeah, overall, I don't see anything bad. I don't see anything good. It is kind of what I would expect from a 60-ton mech that, that costs about 1,400 BV. Let's go into the defensive side and see if anything jumps out. And then we'll get into the efficiency. All right, so again, very much under-armored on the arms. Side torso's nearly maxed out. Center torso and legs are about where it is expected. So again, it basically is at about 70% average across the board, and then it peeled armor off the arms and stuffed it into the side torsos. So, that's not bad. Rear armor, about where I think it should be, maybe a little lower, but that's okay. Let me see what the exact numbers are on that rear armor. So 14 pips across the 3 locations. So that's not terrible. Interestingly, the left torso, right torso, and center torso all have the same number of pips. So 22 pips. Now the CT can obviously have up to 40, including the rear torso, whereas the side torsos can have 28. So a lot. Very interesting. The way the armor is distributed on this thing. Now, looking at the mobility analysis, so one thing is the legs, right? So there are only 4 criticals in each leg. Again, hip and the 3 actuators. So if you do get through the leg armor, which is 20 pips of armor, 14 structure, you are going to likely generate, if you roll 8 or better, you're gonna obviously get a motive hit. So 5.6% of the time, this thing saw a loss in mobility. Now, the average target mod in 10,000 simulations is 2.89, and typically on the last turn it's a 2.5. So that drop is not bad. If you remember when we looked at the Horned Owl, it was a much more significant decrease down to 1 point something. And incidentally, I believe the Horned Owl cost more too. Not just throwing that out there. I mean, I think the Horned Owl, what was the damage on the Horned Owl? Way more than this thing. It's kind of bizarre. Such a bizarre mech. I'm still blown away by how ridiculous targeting computers and pulse lasers are. Thank God we can't just build mechs from scratch. Thank God there's no rules in the tech manual that allow us to build our own mechs. Anyway, back to the Ostroc. Survivability is actually really good for this thing, 89.3%. So in this era, standard engine with 70% armor coverage, I was expecting a much lower number, but I think the way the armor is distributed is extremely beneficial. So the arms have 18 total pips, 8 armor, 10 structure. But nobody cares if you're getting criticals in the arms. There's like nothing in there. I mean, unless you want to run and punch people and your shoulders all gimped out, maybe that's going to ruin your day, but that's not what this mech is for. So really, it's just an 18-point shield on your side torsos, which have max armor. Again, 22 pips, and then another 14 in structure. So it's going to take a really long time to get in and core this thing out, which is what happens most of the time, 5.1%. Actually, almost equal is ammo deaths for the SRM-4. Which is disappointing. But that is located in the center torso. So I guess if you're already internal on the center torso, it is what it is. But that ammo does take up one of the slots there in the CT. So overall, very, very happy with the survivability. It's a weird armor distribution, but it works. It works for the Ostroc. Who knew? Let's take a look at efficiency and see how that shakes out. All right, so it is looking pretty good. It's looking Horndalish, as they say. So 7.39. That's right in there. I mean, that is in the category of mechs I like to take. Anything over 6 and beyond is really a good buy. As you get closer and closer to that 7 and 8 range, that's like a very, very solid performer. Things in the 9s and 10s, they're going to happen. They're like factory freaks. I mean, it's there, the Kodiaks and things along those lines. But again, a 7.39, very, very impressed with that number. All right, so again, recap on some of the statistics. 89.3% on the survival, 151 on the optimized damage, and the damage loss was only 4.6%. That means there's a separation of only 4.6% between the damage we calculated at the optimized level and then when we factored in the survivability. So that's very, very good. And that's represented in that graph in the top left, where you can see sort of the purple pulling away and you can see the blue behind it. The blue is the optimized, the purple is the effective, which factors in survivability. So really, you're not losing a ton of damage there. The survival curve is very, very good in this thing. So very, very strong performer. Now, in terms of gunnery sensitivity and the efficiency curve in general, so it's like sort of indifferent. Gunnery improvements will obviously give you some return there, but it's not as big as some other mechs that you might see. I'm not sure really why that is. Just kind of thinking through the range, I think, when your medium lasers come into play, your ER large are already at such a close range bracket. Like if I look at, so let's see. Yeah, so as soon as the medium lasers even come into play, you're 2 hexes away from short range in those ER large. So long range for the medium lasers in the SRM is 9. The ER large is 7. I know we're not at the threat yet, but I want to tell you, I bet you 7 inches is probably 7 to 6 is probably the sweet spot for this thing. So gunnery sensitivity curve, again, I don't think you need like a wizard behind the wheel here. I mean, I would say gunnery 3 is probably good. I don't know. Gunnery 4, I wouldn't put. Gunnery 4, I like, and this is, again, how you play, how I play. I don't really put anybody at gunnery 4 unless it fits the story and they're like, Joe Schmo militia, or if it's like a locust or a wasp or something where it's largely close range weapons and I can get away with, that lower gunnery score. But for this guy with the ER large, which I think you want in play, I would really consider a gunnery 3 based on everything that I'm seeing here. The only other thing I want to take a look at is the firing distribution. So I'm looking at sort of which weapons it's selected at each range. It's pretty much firing everything. So it's interesting. So it basically fires everything it can. And then as soon as it gets to 9 inches, it alpha strikes. At 7 inches, it lays off a weapon to cool off. Then it alpha strikes. Then it lays off a weapon. Then it alpha strikes. Then it alpha strikes. So basically, as you're in those shorter, within 7 inches, you're like alpha striking, laying off an ER large, alpha striking, laying off an ER large, alpha strike. It's very interesting. And then you get up to 4 heat, and then you dump it off. And then you get up to 4 heat, and then you bleed it off. So pretty cool. Let's talk about threat, shall we? So roles that I picked for this mech were as follows. So number one, I think Brawler. I think it needs to get in. I think it needs to get personal. I think that's where it's going to do its best. It's got very good survivability. It's got good speed and toughness. Again, it doesn't jump, so you don't have that like maneuverability advantage, but it is what it is. The second role is I have as a cavalry role. So it is, in my opinion, for 30-50. I mean, I guess this is controversial, but I think it's on the faster side for 60-ton mechs. When I think about 60, 65, 70-ton mechs, like I think about that gradient where this thing sort of fits in for me mentally. Most things are a 4.6. Now, I guess if you look the other direction at the 55-tonners, Wolverines, that sort of class of mech, a lot of them are 5.8s. But I still think it can perform that role. Again, the difference between a 4.6 and a 5.8 is significant because, you 1.5 rounded up, you go from a 6 to an 8. It's an extra 2 inches, extra 2 hexes. That can be big. So for me, I think cavalry makes sense. You can argue, you can disagree with me. It's okay. The other role I have here is a picket design, and I know that may be weird, but like this is one of those mechs where maybe it's just me, but I think people are like, "What is this thing? Like, is it good? Is it not?" Like you can zap them with your lasers. You can get up close to their fire support mechs. You can use your speed to kind of disrupt. You can, again, you can attract attention. You can intercept, right? You can block firing lanes and things, and it's okay. Again, shield yourself with your arms. Like, show them your strong side. Show them your whatever. Let your arms get blown off. Who cares? Let one arm get blown off. Pick it up and hit someone over the head with it. Do whatever you want. It's an Ostroc. Just keep your torsos protected. And again, they're very well armored. So I think this thing can play in that space where it's just sort of a pesky annoyance. But it is delivering significant amount of damage for the tech base, for the era. Okay. Obvious weaknesses. Don't let things get behind it. It's got mediocre rear armor, and it has literally nothing that can shoot in the rear arc. It has nothing on the arms. It has no rear-mounted weapons. So that's just something to consider, if you are running that picket type of role. Like, just don't get caught in between two mechs because something will, like, just blow you apart from the backside, which isn't fun. So you gotta keep that in mind. But otherwise, I think this mech is a strong performer. So that's the Ostroc. I was excited to do this one. I got to be honest. I really didn't know anything about this mech. It's definitely one that I will be painting up. It's definitely one that I'm going to want to field. So excited to see what it can do. With some dice in hand. We'll see, guys. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you've played the Ostroc, if you're familiar with it, if you have the Ironwind Metals sculpt, or if you have the new one, like what you think about it. What you plan on doing with it, what force are you going to put it in? I feel like it's a pretty prolific design, and then maybe every major house has it. I'd have to look on master unit lists, but let me know what you think about the Ostroc. That said, Aries Games and Minis, guys, don't forget about Derek. Awesome stuff over there. If you need your BattleTech fix, the minis, the dice, the books, he's got all the terrain that you could want, decals and hobby supplies, paints, brushes, all the stuff over at Aries Games and Minis. So definitely check them out. Fast shipping, great prices. Also, speaking of fast, subscribe button. Look, you can just click and done. It's over. It's free. Costs nothing. Also, leave a like. That is another thing that costs nothing and is free and takes a second. And then, like I said, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the Ostroc. And if you want to get more involved in the channel, you can head on over to Patreon. You can start for as little as $1 a month. There's a $5, $10 tier. At some of the higher tiers, you can do more cool things. You can vote on which mechs I will review in Battlytics. All that great stuff is available to our patrons. And thank you again to all of our wonderful patrons out there for helping us keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. We couldn't do it without you. But that said, guys, I'm all done. I'm all wrapped up. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this review of the Ostroc. And of course, stay tuned. Always great stuff coming from Death from Above Wargaming. Have a good night.